Alright, another DraftScience video presentation. So, some other comments. Puro Mindless Marbles, one on my video I guess I'll get to, and then maybe a video that has some demonstrations in it that are just going to be, again, recontextualized in understanding the actual physics rather than the plain language physics that's used that's often not very accurate. So Piro wrote this comment, and it's just so incomprehensible. But anyway, let's play with it. Gary doesn't realize if you fire the lighter cart, okay, so we're firing a cart, it's going 1.4 not nor 2x the speed. So I guess that's not 2x the speed. So again, he keeps asserting this 1.4 thing, the same spring, two different objects, half the mass, twice the mass. And he keeps asserting this 1.4 thing. Now, if you do a Google search on this 1.4, you think this 1.4 would be incredibly important because everybody would be aware of this 1.4 thing. But you can't find any relevant physics results to 1.4. It's not some kind of real physics thing, okay, connected to kinetic energy. So you really won't find anyone else saying this. I mean, you won't find any physicists saying this stuff. So it's just unique to these commenters as far as I know. I've never seen anybody else using this bizarre rationalization that they don't accept that the momentum has to be equal in the equation, that somehow I can just destroy the momentum. The spring just destroys the momentum. The spring catches fire, the spring blows up, the spring, when it's trying to push the faster thing, it can't do it for some reason. It only can do 1.4. It can't go twice as fast. There's absolutely no evidence for this. So, I mean, they just keep asserting it, and there's just no evidence that this is true. Okay, anyway, so he just keeps saying it like this is such a fact that you should all know this special fact, and it's not a fact. There's no evidence of it. He can't produce any evidence for it. He just keeps asserting it and asserting it and asserting it, and there's no evidence for it. So there's nothing you can say, right? There's nothing you can do in this conversation, right? If they can just keep making assertions for which they don't have to prove them. It's a 300-year-old fact, at least. I don't know why Newton didn't know it and everybody else didn't know it, but anyway, there should be some evidence of this fact. All right. Okay, not 2x the speed of the twice as heavy cart. And when you drop a weight on it to make it 2x, the speed would half. If you drop the weight, the dropped weight, okay, its speed would be half if the dropped weight is moving the same speed. So, yeah, it's just so hard. You can't even read this crap, let alone understand what he's saying. So now he's saying if I drop a weight on a cart that's moving, somehow I have the weight going the same speed as the car, right? So it's just hovering above the car, and then I just drop it. Somehow I change the speed of the car. No, that's like having somebody, if I'm driving 60 miles an hour and then somebody runs 60 miles an hour next to the car and then jumps into the car, that somehow the car changes speed. No, it doesn't, because you have the same speed. So you can't change the speed because you're going the same speed. All you're doing is adding somebody who has their own momentum, and you're adding that momentum in a very compatible way because nothing changes. You both have the same speed, so nothing changes. Yeah, obviously. Okay. And then the cart would be going 0.7. So he thinks the speed of the cart changes when something the same speed jumps in the cart, which can't be true. It's just complete nonsense. So another pile of nothing. I mean, how do I argue with something that's completely nonsensical? That I change the speed of something by attaching two things that are going the same speed. I mean, I could attach a bicycle to a car. So the bicycle is going 60 miles an hour. The car 30, let's say. 30 mile an hour, and a car going 30 mile an hour. And somehow I just attach the two. We hold hands or whatever out the window. Somehow we change speeds because we connected to each other. No, we don't change speeds. Can't go 0.7 the speed of the twice as heavy to being with the cart. So the speed of the twice as heavy to being with the cart, whatever the hell that could possibly be. I mean, he just couldn't care less. about this argument. It just clearly just demonstrates that these trolls are just impossible. They're just they're well, like I say, even religious fanatics could type better arguments than this. I mean, the most deplorable flat earther can probably be doing better than this. All right. However, if you drop a still object, well, there you go. That's the experiment they've done about 600 million times. It will slide on the cart while the cart accelerated it through the friction between them. Yeah, and the catch is you can reduce that to almost nothing. It doesn't really... See, the catch with friction is if it's inside your own system, it doesn't matter much. So the friction's going to be inside the system. So it's internal friction. So it doesn't add up to much because there isn't all that much... what's the word? It can't go anywhere. So yes, you'll heat the cart a little bit, but it's just a little bit. Frankly, I'm just saying, they've done the experiments different, all kinds of ways, doing it with, timing it by how fast the car is going past a light switch. And then there's one with tape, they actually roll a tape behind it with its pushing little dots on the tape. And they even have it done with, I can't say they have it done with the pucks on, the cold pucks, but anyway, the point is that you lose a tiny bit of the momentum from dropping the weight. It's a tiny fraction of the speed, and what you clearly see is that if you double the mass of the object, it halves its velocity. It's true in the physics girl video with the trains. It's true in the real world. Yes, you lose a little bit of momentum, maybe 2%, but that's it. Tiny percentage of the momentum is lost to heat. So again, just more bullshit. Okay, and the energy spent moving the weight up to speed will further slow the cart. So again, it doesn't do it much, and the fact is that the momentum, it remains essentially the same, and what happens is you lose half your velocity. You doubled your mass, you lose half your velocity. There's no 1.4 nonsense anywhere to be seen. So just a horrible garbage comment. All right, then mindless marbles to Jerry. It's fascinating to see just how swayed he can get by his own analogies. So all of the analogies that physicists use are okay, but if somebody else uses an analogy, it's invalid somehow. So, I mean, he's going to somehow argue that analogies aren't an effective way to explain something by comparing it to something that's its like. Of course, that's what everybody strives to do, is compare things to things that are similar. Okay. Because he's so glued to his bucket analogy. Yeah, well, the point is that it works in terms of understanding that mass and velocity have a relationship, and the relationship is your mass is essentially telling you what kind of what the velocity can be placed upon. Okay, it's the movement of your little atoms and the little bits inside of you and all that kind of stuff, and all that mass adds up. And the fact is, if you spread energy over a small amount of mass, then the mass will fill the bucket high. And if you have a large amount of mass, it can't fill as high. It's a very good analogy. You're just dismissing it without even making an argument, explaining how it fails to accurately get the relationship between mass and velocity. And again, so you're just doing it, you're just dismissing it out of hand as if all analogies are dismissible. Just complete duplicity. You just can't be more of a hypocrite. All right, he forced himself to say that force is momentum. I didn't force myself to say it. I've been saying it on this channel for 10 years, essentially. All right, I mean, it says it on my website. It's the photon stupid. That's basically saying everything is just about electrons and protons being moved by photons. Fuckhead. I mean, shit. I mean, complete asswipe, lying scum. So again, this idea that I change something or force something. No, it's clear I've always believed, okay, that there is only one force. I've been making a unification argument since the beginning of this channel. So again, how do you justify these stupid innuendos and lies about what I've said and what I've been saying? I mean, you're just such a liar now. You can't make anything like a real physics argument. All you can make is this raggy crap about how if you make analogies, they're no good. If we make analogies, they're great. you just suck as a human. All right, his reasoning, question mark. Force is momentum because force is a change in momentum per time. No, my argument is what it's always been, is that the only things that matter are your mass and your velocity, frankly. And I've said it right from the beginning, and I've said videos weeks ago. F equals E equals moment P equals, it's all just about, okay, mass moving. I've said it right from the beginning. I've always said it. So again, just more horse shit that any story here is changed or anything is being forced. Bullshit. You're just a liar. Okay, a literal contradiction in terms. How would it be a contradiction in terms? Force is momentum because force is a change in momentum. Right, you always have momentum. You're the people that argue, okay, we're in a universe, we're always moving, we're always accelerating. So frankly, you could never even say anybody was ever in any kind of inertial frame or any of this other horse shit, because every millisecond their momentum is changing. Their position on the earth, their position here, all the positions are changing constantly. And so in any one moment, the vector that we're moving in is changing. Anyway. And you can set time equal to 1 second. Well, guess what? This is commonly done in physics, retard, is where you establish, to just make an equation go smoother, you can just say C is 1. You can change any constant to anything and then just fix it when you're done. All right, so that's a common thing done in physics. Just letting you know, mathematics is changing a unit, a constant. This is such nonsense, but he won't explain how it's nonsense. I have a hard time fathoming people who become so demented. So again, this is not an argument of any kind either. I can just type that on, make a video, and I'll type that on your video. Well, I have a hard time fathoming how people can be this demented. There. Have I won the argument? I proved it, didn't I? No, I didn't. You can apply the same reasoning to conclude that acceleration is the same as velocity. Well, I already did that. It really is, frankly. I mean, what do you think? Just as you can't understand that momentum is a description of energy, you can't understand that acceleration is a description of your velocity. That what acceleration is made out of is your change in velocity, that you're adding velocity or subtracting velocity. You don't understand that your acceleration is entirely made out of velocity, that just changing your velocity is acceleration. You don't understand that? Oh, fuck. I have a hard time fathoming people can become this demented. How can you be this demented? You don't know that momentum's a description of energy, and certainly Newton thought so. You won't concede that simple argument. You think momentum is I don't know, it's just a wacky concept they came up with. I don't know what it was connected to. What do you think momentum is? It's just so preposterous that you're sitting here arguing that momentum, well, we replaced it because it wasn't doing anything. It wasn't describing anything. And now we have this new thing that's describing something we call energy. But they had no concept of it back in Newton's day. Oh, bullshit. Incredible bullshit. All right, since acceleration is a change in velocity per time, well, at least you got that part right. It's made entirely of velocity. There's nothing else acceleration is made out of except velocity. Okay. Set time equal to 1 second, and thus acceleration is velocity. Yes, exactly. That's exactly how it turns out. I'm sorry. So you don't like that Newton's original equation was, change in momentum over change in time. And you decide to say a change in momentum, we're going to call that acceleration. When all I can do is say, yes, it's just change in velocity. So it just depends on what words you want to use. Okay, but acceleration isn't some special thing. It's just a change in velocity. And again, how does your velocity change in a circumstance where, say, the force is an impulse? The force isn't a constant force. So again, the whole idea is that F equals ma is supposed to be applied as Newton applied it to a constant force like gravity, not to kinetic balls, not to trains colliding. It's not what F equals ma is meant for. But anyway, Like he doesn't have anything going on in his noggin when he blurps shit out. So I could type that on your video too. So please make a video and I'll just type this shit. This absolute shit. Okay? So you think you're some sort of smart person because you can type absolute generic shit that any moron could type on anyone's video on the internet and say, there, I won the argument because I insulted you and that's all I did. And that's all you've done here. Okay. It's like he has a distaste for definitions and rigor. So where's the rigor you have a taste for? Is Stephen Bro's video scientific rigor? Is that rigorous? Is that, a great science boner? No, I'm afraid not. Okay, that is just such it's a pus-covered, infested pile of shit, and you know it. Oh, you're just such an amazingly duplicitous character. Of course, the Ben Shapiro type debate bros. So whatever the fuck that is, what is this? The Ben Shapiro type debate bros. What is that? You mean all the talking head physicists who go on his show, and talk absolute shit? Okay, are generally the least logical people based on my observations. So I don't even know what the fuck that, I don't even know who he's insulting there. Ben Shapiro or the people on Ben's show? Or the audience watching his show? Or the asswipes who actually make Ben Shapiro references? Like, they should mean something to somebody. That's on you, fuckhead. Apparently you watch it. Loser. Alright, anyway. Alright, so Bob Stay, who is Mickey Farley, I can't believe you guys are still giving attention to this manipulative psychopath. There'll be no evidence of all this manipulation. What's the manipulation? I mean, it's just hilarious. That they can say that there's something about me that's, Svengali, I'm somehow using wobbly eyeballs in the background. And I'm hypnotizing people with my spiritual blah, 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 and my blah, 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 and my bag of tricks. What is the trick? Oh, you people are so pathetic. And his cultist playing interlocutor for his misunderstood guru. What the fuck is that even making any sense? And his cultist playing interlocutor. Who the fuck is that? For his misunderstood guru. What is this rubbish? You can't even read this crap. It's so fucking incomprehensible nonsense. So there's some person defending me who's misunderstands his own guru. What the fuck are you even talking about? Oh, you people are so fucking pathetic. So this is their physics argument. This is the best they can produce as evidence for why conventional physics knows what it's doing. This is the best they can do. All right. The psychopath will never do the experiments himself. What experiments did you do yourself? Oh, that's right, none. So far, there are amateurs doing experiments, and frankly, they're mostly, flat earth, free energy type loop-de-doos, right? And we know those experiments don't have much credibility. Some of them are overt shenanigans where they just, make a video where they put electricity into it and they lie. And most of them are just shenanigans in the sense that they've contrived the experiment to do it a certain way, to make it look a certain way. And or they've been like liars like Ken Wheeler who don't really explain to you what they know about the ferrocell and keep pretending it's really bending light with magnetism. That's the kind of crap you get. So why would somebody bother? But the fact is, I have done experiments. So this is just such a stupid lie. I mean, I did a ton of laser beam experiments trying to duplicate the effects of an interferometer. And that's when, of course, I found out that, just having a dirty piece of glass can create the pattern. And then I did some research and I found a 1980 paper, where a guy explains all of that crap and how, well, why doesn't anybody pay any attention to this as being the explanation for the pattern? I mean, you have all this crap about how it's light interference when, it's a practical matter. It really isn't. So it's about the fact that you're putting the light through a bunch of small openings and therefore causing it to diffract, spread. Okay, anyway, so I have done the experiment, so that's just a lie. I'm just saying that obviously in this argument, me doing the experiment isn't going to have nearly as much credibility as somebody else doing the experiment. And clearly I'm all for the experiments, as I'm offering real cash for people to do them. So again, this is just more lying, in just such a overt manner to in some way imply that I'm against experiments when I'm all for it. And you're just saying that somehow I should spend my time somehow acquiring the materials to do the experiment, when I've explained, well, a lot of things in my life changed, and one of them is I don't have the same space as I used to have, and a lot of other things, so it's just not practical in my current living circumstances. So yeah, it's not really a great idea, but I have pointed out that I've offered real money to other people to do it, so just keep lying. Okay. Because this has never been about science. So again, it certainly isn't about science from your people's side, because you don't argue any science, right? Yeah, none at all. Okay, no experiments. Experiments mean nothing to you. And then you offer, you sit there and say, I want experiments, and yet you don't pay any attention to them anyway. If I prove that the same spring compression, and I put two different masses on it, I mean, it's already in Stephen Bro's video, for fuck's sake. The fact is, it already is in his video. The same spring compression isn't going to create 1.4. Okay, the lighter object isn't going to leave 1.4 the velocity. It's going to leave twice the velocity. Now, if I do that experiment, are you saying then you'll concede all of these arguments? That you'll concede that this mv squared thing is a pile of shit? Will you? So if I get that guarantee from you, troll, then I'll do the experiment. Because I already know what the outcome's going to be, okay? I'm really certain. Again, I could just probably... Well, the fact is Stephen Bro's video quality is so bad that I can't really slow it down any further. I can't do anything to try to glean the velocities of the object because it's so poorly done. But clearly, it's already been shown to you. You're just too stupid to see it. I mean, the Professor Lewin video showed it to you in the sense that he changed the weights of the carts. And the cart going this way always went the same speed. Okay, and the cart going this way always has the same momentum. You can't make a spring give disproportional momentums. It's really not possible. If you compress the spring a certain amount, it has to give a certain amount of energy this way and a certain amount of energy that way, and that's all it can do, asshole. So you're going to lose, but you're not going to concede. So it doesn't really mean anything, right? It's the usual manipulative stunt by a psychopath to get attention for his dingy to get attention in his dingy basement. So again, this is how you argue. Galileo didn't have a great house. Just understand. Didn't live in a palace. Lots of people have had to get by on a meager existence. And all he's saying is anybody has to get by on a meager existence, they're insultable. Faraday was start off from a very meager origin. And certainly the people like you would have made his life impossible. You wouldn't have made it possible for Faraday to overcome that meager beginning. I mean, you're just such pathetic, monstrous, horrible, awful, disgusting human beings. And you're on this, and so it's sort of science says, you sort of say, well, these are the people on science's side. You can't, how many of these people do I need to see? How many red hatters do I need to see? Okay, how many do I need red hatters interviewed on the street before I figure out what they're about? And I start to say, well, what the fuck is the Republican Party stand for? They really do seem to want to fly the Confederate flag in America. They really don't want to concede they lost that war. Oh, fuck. So, just so bad. All right. So from there, we go to, I don't think there's any of, this is all the old stuff. Okay. So I will be doing these two other comments by this Cyrus Thornton guy. Maybe I'll go to his channel and unblock him. I must have him blocked, maybe. Well, probably. Because that's why he's posting here. Let's see. Report user. Yeah, unblock. So I will unblock him. Alright, just because he has gone to the trouble to write all this crap. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that he's attempting to make. I mean, these arguments are insulting, but I'm just saying they're not gratuitously insulting. So, I will, like I said, I mean, he types, there's a lot of crap here, right? I mean, a whole argument made. He thinks there's a video here that demonstrates something, but that doesn't happen. So, good on you. Most of the argument is about the subject of physics. Good on you for that. So I will get to those comments. I mean, each one deserves a video. So I already did the video on action and reaction. Now the irony is, well, maybe I'll do that now and then go to the other comments. So I'll play a little bit of a video I was linked to that has some stuff in it that's worth talking about, but it's again it's so poorly done as a video. I mean, not poor. I mean, well, yeah, it's just human beings are a little bit too silly. All right, so we got this guy's video. I'll speed it up a bit because I don't think we'll need to have all the words perfectly understandable. And
for this demo, this is the law of inertia, which states an object at rest will stay at rest unless there's an outside net force. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to exert a outside net force on this playing card right here, but I'm not going to exert a outside net force on this red hot chili pepper.
Right. So this really demonstrates. I would point out the fact that friction is bias for velocity. So all of these pull the tablecloth things out stuff aren't really about net forces and directions as much as they're about the fact that all the forces can be defeated by reducing the amount of time you have interaction with them. So the least time you have interaction, the least the force can act, and therefore that's what's the real key ingredient. So whenever you're interacting with something, you're interacting on a molecular level with the same kind of force, which would be like magnetism. So if I was to put two things, two magnets together, the same rule is going to apply. I can defeat the friction created by the magnets by pulling quickly. By moving something quickly, I can defeat even the magnetic force, the constant force. So the constant force has a loophole, in the sense that the least time you're interacting with it, the more it doesn't have any time to act and to create a force that you have to counter. So the least time, the least force. And so it sort of explains why there's a huge bias in many things to velocity. The faster something's going, the easier time it has going through something. And that tendency is really important to understand why mv squared exists. It only exists because experiments can fool you, because you're taking advantage of the fact that fast things will penetrate deeper in clay, for example. There wouldn't be any mv squared if it wasn't for the fact that we can be fooled into thinking something has more energy when all it has is the advantage of speed.
Do it correctly. Because there's no external net force acting on this pepper except for force of gravity, the pepper should fall into place. Alright. 3, 2, 1. Physics. Alright, in this demo, we're going to do the law of inertia demo, where an object at rest stays at rest unless there's an external net force, with the glass of water and the red hot chili pepper from the previous demo. Now, this system is on top of a piece of paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exert a net external force on the piece of paper, but not...
He's going to do exactly the same experiment, right? And he does it a third time in here. I mean, and he's talking as if this is two different laws, when no, this is the same law. You're just defeating the friction, and that's all you're doing. So by going fast, by moving fast, you're defeating the friction that the force is creating. The applied gravity has less time to apply the force once you break free of the resistance. And therefore the friction doesn't exist anymore. Essentially, you're defeating the friction by, it's probably comparable to the fact that you defeat the friction in the cannon, shooting the cannon off a mountain example, and you shoot the cannon fast enough off and the cannonball just goes around and around forever in an orbit. Okay, so it's the same principle in the sense that there's obviously a huge advantage to reaching a certain speed. You reach a certain speed, and you've completely defeated the gravity, the friction that's going to be created by the pressure of the gravity. And the same thing's happening on the molecular level. You completely defeat the adhesion there is between the substances by going fast.
Glass of water. If I do this properly, because I'm not exerting a net external force on the glass should stay right there. This is a smaller version of the tablecloth trick.
Right, you've defeated the friction. So by going fast, you defeat the friction. So that's all that's really being demonstrated. It doesn't have anything to do with these forces. It just has to do with the adhesion of the friction is defeated by velocity.
Now, for a couple of tips. When you pull on this piece of paper, you have to pull with a horizontal force. That way there's no vertical forces acting on this glass. Because if there is, this glass just might flip. All right, 3, 2, 1. Physics. Here's another demo you can do with the law of inertia and Newton's second law.
All right, well, this one's sort of stupid. Okay, he's just going to move the line back and forth, and then he's going to move the big chair and say, look how hard it is to move the chair. So he's always trying to do something to look athletic or something. All right, let's see if there's some better one here. What's this one? Oh, this is just how fast something drops. He looks like he's 3 feet tall here. He's just, he's barely high enough to reach the counter. Anyway, all right, don't need to go there. So he's just dropping things, showing that they fall at the same speed. So not very miraculous. Let's see what else he does here. All right, pushing on the wall one. This is a good one. This is the Piro one.
Opposite force. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to exert a force on this wall. Now, when I exert a force on that wall, the wall is going to exert a force back on me. You ready?
So we just did this conversation, so that's why it's relevant. Now, the wall is not going to exert a force on him. Okay, what he's doing is giving away this way, and he's going to go that way because of it. And he's mostly going to go that way because he also doesn't have any good adhesion with the floor. So the floor's, he's not sticking to the floor. But the point is he is giving pressure away in a direction, and he isn't getting an opposite reaction. He's getting exactly what you get when you give something away. See, we're being pushed into the ground by gravity. We're not acting. Okay, we're just victims of the two entities. And so the pushback is real from the Earth because gravity can't give. Gravity isn't an object that gives it away and then goes the opposite way. It's an active force, and it just puts the force in us. The force goes into the ground, and then the ground, the force goes into us, and then we give it to the ground. And by giving it to the ground, we regain our equilibrium. We give it away, essentially. So that's all that's required. All you really need to do is give the force away. You don't have to wait for an opposite reaction.
3, 2, 1. Did you see that? When I exerted a force on the wall pushed back on me.
So that's what you're saying, but again, you don't really prove that. So I'm just saying there really isn't any proof that the wall pushed back. You could just as easily say that all that took place was you gave something away, and by giving it away, you have a deficit. You changed your energy. Okay, by giving that way away, you still had stuff going this way, and now you have an imbalance. By giving this away, you change the balance of how much you have going this way to that way, and therefore now you go that way relative to whatever direction you were going. So you either decelerate if you were still going this way, or you accelerate in the opposite direction. And by accelerate, I mean you just go. All right, pushing up on your own chair.
I'm going to try my hardest to pull myself up by pulling up on the chair. Now, if physics fails me, you should see both me and the chair.
Right, so obviously he's not giving away anything. So he's just pushing on himself, which is work, but yeah, it's just going to create heat. Okay, and it's just going to be here. It won't create any action because he's not giving any force away to anything. Except the force of gravity is going into him and then going into the chair and going into the floor. So he is giving that away.
Here, rise up. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Okay. A little bit too silly. Let's see. Okay, this is just weighing objects, which is just a waste of time. I was hoping he was going to drop these things on the scale and say, let's see how much they weigh when we drop them from an inch. Now, so he just weighs 2 barbells, and then he plays, look, I'm going to drop them and they're going to fall the same rate, and that's going to be interesting to almost no one. Okay, and then this is some stupid egg thing, which is usually spinning an egg, and the inside of the egg is liquid, and therefore it's still spinning. So yeah, we all know that. Blah, 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 blah. And then we're back at the end of the video to exactly the same thing he did before. He's going to pull the little bottom peg out and therefore prove I can reduce friction. This is essentially all it's proving. Okay, so we're done with that. Lots of, so many, I got a ton of these kind of things to go through to see if there's something in any of these videos that, does an experiment that's really useful. But, sorry, nothing in this one. All right, so we'll pause and I think go to my comments, right? Something like that. All right, so there's some new wacky comment 20 minutes ago. Alex PC. So I get these comments where people are nowhere ever anywhere close to the subject of the video. So the video was on Newton's third law, and this comment is a mini-series starting from 14 billion years ago to the modern age, starting where you disagree with the scientific interpretation would be interesting, blah, 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 blah. I've already pointed out I have absolutely no interest in creation stories, frankly. I couldn't care less whether the universe was a Big Bang or whether it's a recycling universe. That is, I would argue that there's just as good evidence to argue that the fact is the constants are changing, that the old universe had more gravity in it, okay, than the new universe, the modern one, and that all that's oscillating. All that's oscillating is whether the masses are getting compressed, and when they're compressed, then there's less stuff on the outside, right? To compress the matter, there's more force. And so the more force in the matter, the less force in the environment. The more force in the environment, the less force there is in the matter. And so the galaxies are just doing this. They get getting bigger, and then they go get smaller. And then they get bigger, and then they get smaller. And that's all that's happening. But regardless, who cares? I mean, do you really think all that cosmological horseshit, that we have enough evidence to draw conclusions about all of those functions? I mean, the physics that's interesting, the only universe, again, I'll say it again, the only universe that really exists is the small universe. The atoms, the electrons and the protons and the forces that are manipulating them is the universe that makes all the other universes. Okay, everything else happening in the universe, it happens there first. That's the one to understand. But anyway. Whatever, blah, 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 blah. So he does it twice. On two different videos, he changes the subject of the video. So, what do you think about Big Bang singularity? Do you believe it started the universe? Who cares? I know, I don't care. I have my own opinion that it's a closed system, the universe, that all the energy going out, the photons flying through empty space, going nowhere, actually do end up coming back, okay, as gravity. So I have an opinion, but why opine? Because we're not going to be able to collect the evidence, frankly. So it's not that interesting a subject, I don't think. So again, you can just keep obsessing about that, you people, but I don't understand why you're obsessed with it, because it's really not the interesting part. The interesting part is understanding the elemental functions of the little tiny bits, because those little things are what makes everything else happen. Has to happen there first. Okay, so this is Jim. So you agree that Newton's second law is F equals change in momentum over change in time. I don't agree that there's anything called a Newton law in the first place. Okay, just to be clear, I'm not a big fan of laws. I'd say there's tendencies. Okay, so that's a good rule to have. So, I mean, in some ways, the laws are stated as tendencies, right? I mean, the whole, a thing at rest tends to stay at rest. They don't say something like, it absolutely will stay at rest. They say it tends to, and it tends to. But anyway, whatever. Just play your little silly games. What I don't believe is there's anything called a work function that equals force times distance. I think that's laughable nonsense. I don't think, okay, because obviously anything coasting can coast forever in space, right? If I throw a wrench in space, Force times distance could be it goes 10 feet and then crashes into something, or it goes 10 billion light years before it crashes into something. Why would I bother with distance when we're talking about a force that's made of essentially an impulse? The force is a certain amount of force the wrench has. It's momentum, it's velocity, and that's all it has. And it doesn't matter whether it hits something 10 years from now or hits something tomorrow, it's got the same force. There's not extra force. There's not continuous force. It's not something happening all the time. Force, 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 force. So this is where your formulas go completely to shit. Okay, the work function is just about an opposing force. And again, if the opposing force is just something moving at a speed, that means all it has is the opposing force is its momentum. So all I'm saying is what does it take to overcome its momentum? That's the work function. It has a certain amount of momentum. I have to overcome its momentum, period. The work equals the momentum. The force is the momentum it has. That's all there is. There isn't some other force. That's all something has when it hits me is its momentum. That's the force I have to deal with. All right. Anyway, because you wrote that F equals mv, I'm saying it does logically. I mean, clearly, F equaling change in momentum over change in time means the change is going to be a change in momentum, right? So obviously the force will be an amount of momentum. That's what's going to interact with me is momentum. I'm going to be interacting with something's momentum. The momentum is going to be exactly what the force is. Which of course is wrong based on what you said, that you agree that Newton's second law is F equals momentum over change in time. I don't know how does somebody even make sense of what he's saying here? I mean, this doesn't even. So you agree that Newton's second law is F equals change in momentum over change in time. And again, it's not me agreeing. The point is that's what Newton wrote. Newton didn't write F equals ma. This is what Newton wrote. This is Newton's idea, okay, of what the force is, okay, is an amount of change in momentum. That's Newton's idea. It's not some acceleration thing. Because you wrote that F equals mv. Yeah, and what's the difference? mv is momentum. All right, so I don't know what you're talking about, which of course is wrong based on what you said, that you agree that Newton's second law is F equals change in momentum over change in time, because if the force is equal to the change in momentum over time, if you have constant momentum, so again, what is this constant momentum? So now they're turning momentum into a constant force. Your momentum is created by an impulse. A bullet goes because of an impulse, right? The explosion takes place. It gives the bullet a certain amount of velocity, and if there is no air resistance or other bullshit, the bullet maintains that momentum. It's an amount of energy the bullet contains. It is not a constant force. There is no constant force inside the bullet. Well, I'm not going to go that far. There's no visible constant force pushing the bullet. It's not adding a force and adding a force and adding a force. It's one amount of force. It's one amount of energy moving. It's an amount of photons. So if I turn a laser beam on for 1 second, there's a certain amount of momentum that I've created in space. That amount of momentum is in an object. It's like the object contains 1 billion photons going that way. So the object contains a discrete amount of force, not a constantly supplied laser beam, just a pulse of laser beam. That's what it contains, a pulse of force, a confined amount, there, that volume, no more, no less. That's what it contains, a volume of energy. Okay, if the force is equal to the change in momentum over time, if you have constant momentum, then your force is zero. So again, it just doesn't make any sense, right? Oh, you don't have any force because I don't even understand how you could have something called constant momentum and then say you have anything called momentum and then say you don't have anything called force. I mean, it's just too silly because the change in momentum is zero. Well, obviously, if you're not moving, but we're talking about objects that are moving. Oh, again, just too stupid. Because the way you originally said that Newton's wrote his second law tells you that to have a constant momentum, you need a constant force. Well, again, I've overtly been saying that this has nothing to do with that. You don't seem to understand that everything in the universe isn't run by constant forces. They aren't all gravity. They aren't laser beams turned on constantly pushing something. There isn't a laser beam. If I throw a wrench, there's not a laser beam constantly pushing the wrench. There's just an amount of energy, a discrete amount, a second's worth, okay, that's inside the object, and that second's worth is processing the object through space. All right. Newton wrote his second law tells you that you have a constant momentum, you need a constant force. So again, that's just absolute horse shit. It has nothing to do with that. So just keep completely misparaphrasing everything I've overtly and completely said with clarity. Okay, no one could ever say, "Oh yeah, Gary implied there's constant forces pushing things." Now that's not what he said, and that's not what he's implying. Okay, which is obviously wrong. Well, it says you. How come? And nothing's obvious in this mush you typed here. So even you using the word obvious is just obviously wrong. It's obviously wrong for you to use the word obvious because you're so inarticulate. Anyway, even if I put the time intervals to be 1, then F equals delta P, which is the change in momentum, which means that PF, so I don't know why I would multiply a force times momentum. What the fuck could that possibly be? So now he says it equals pi plus F. No, it doesn't. What are you talking about? Why are you introducing pi? Pi has to do with how a force is distributed over an area. It can't possibly have anything to do with this conversation at all. All right, PF is the final momentum. So I guess he's saying P initial. Oh, okay. So P final equals P initial plus F. Why would you add a force to your momentum? That doesn't make any sense. No, P final would be P initial minus P final. And then you'll know, P final, no, you want to know the force. So he's put the force on the other side and added it to P initial. Right, so the P final will be P initial plus whatever added momentum, whatever you added to the momentum. Yes, whatever you contributed as a force. Of course, that's exactly what you were looking for. All right, anyway, sorry, I was confused by the gibberish. Is the final momentum. Right, so Pi is the initial momentum, which means that for each time interval, the momentum increases. So there's no evidence that this takes place. So again, you can just keep arguing that this crap happens, but you have no evidence to support it. You have no reasoning. You can't apply this formula to the simple kinetic ball example. Let's put the kinetic balls on a table, okay? So there's no gravity. We're not going up in gravity, and then we can use that distance. So if I just have a ball and I hit another ball into it, how do you apply this formula? What distance are you using? There's no distance to use. There's no way you can do this silly math equation to figure out that one decelerated and one accelerated. You have nothing to go on. You don't have any evidence that there's any deceleration by this object and any acceleration by this object. From all experimental evidence, the fact is this one stops dead and this one goes immediately. The end. All right. Pi is the initial momentum, which means that for each time interval, the momentum increases, and obviously in that case, mass is constant. Newton's law ends up being F equals ma. So again, the A is a made-up concept. So that's your business. You can play with it all you want. I'm saying that all A ever will be is a change in velocity. And the change in velocity is just a change in momentum. So again, you can keep playing these little word games, but there is no such thing as acceleration without measuring velocity. And there's no such thing as velocity having any meaning outside of momentum. So you're just doing whatever. You're spinning around in circles for no productive reason. The fact is, the force is momentum. Work is momentum. Everything is momentum. You don't need to understand anything else. It's all matter moving, and it takes what's called energy to move matter. That is, you have to apply a force. All right, anyway. So you agree that this equation is fine. I agree that you can play with the word game all you want, but the bottom line is all you're really saying is the A is just a change in velocity. Acceleration is just a change in velocity. Okay, so you're just saying m times the change in velocity, and frankly that's the same as saying the change in momentum, because if the mass is staying the same, the two terms are exactly the same thing. All right, so anyway, so what you originally wrote, which is F equals mv, is completely wrong. Well, I'm not going to argue. It's completely right. There's no way you could prove it to be in any way just as good a way of saying it. It's just as good a way of saying it. There's no point in wasting your time saying acceleration as if it's a concept. Change in velocity is what acceleration is. Change in velocity. Velocity is what momentum is made out of. So again, you're right back to momentum. You haven't proven anything completely wrong. Oh, just no. It's just, these people are just so belligerently stupid. And it shows your lack of understanding of Newton's second law. No, I'm saying that you clearly don't understand Newton's physics at all. Clearly, the second law was not supposed to be applied to collisions. So you can even pretend that part. I mean, Newton was talking about how you measure a force that's constant. And a lot of physicists will even point that out, that you don't apply Newton's second law unless you have a constant force. So, you're the one playing, with Newton's reputation in a sloppy-ass bullshit way. F equals ma was really is really a gravitational formula. It's really just to understand the force of gravity. But anyway, play your games. As for the other thing, you say that Newton did not say anything about kinetic energy. This is true. Well, he did say something about it in the sense it wasn't called kinetic energy. It was called mv squared, which was preposterously wrong as an answer. So let's just understand, it wasn't a little bit wrong. It was 100% wrong. It gave answers that by today's standards were 100% off. Twice as wrong, okay? Today we say it has 100. Back then it said it was 200 joules. It was a way off answer. So obviously Newton didn't give it much, he didn't think much on it because he knew it was fucking wrong. He knew it was nonsense. So why would he waste a whole bunch of time trying to explain to people why this is absolute nonsense? Of course there isn't this insane amount of energy. All right, anyway. I mean, Newton knew that light things go 4 times higher in gravity because the gravity affects them less. Because they have less mass. So again, I mean, this is just too stupid. He knew they wasn't, hey, there's more energy in it because it went higher in gravity. He knew that wasn't how it works. That doesn't give it more quantity of motion. All right, anyway. So let me just restart. Newton did not say anything about kinetic energy. So he did say something about it. So let's be clear. He just didn't make a huge, giant public stink. So he did write a couple of letters where he pointed out arguments against it, just saying, obviously, gravity is, the argument I just made, something like that. So he made a few arguments just pointing out how this isn't a threat. This is nonsense. All right, this is true, but the point is that from Newton's second law, you can do it. That's right. You can pervert it. Newton didn't pervert it into this crap. Certainly Newton wouldn't agree with you. If they could dig up Newton, I'm quite sure Newton wouldn't be on your side, okay? You really think Newton would be on your side, where you've basically said everything Newton did, all of his mechanics is garbage because he doesn't understand what energy is. Clearly, Newton did understand what energy was, that it was just about mass and velocity, and he got all kinds of right fucking answers. I mean, he predicted when Halley's Comet was coming back and all that kind of crap, okay, using his rational physics, not your irrational physics. And if he had used mv squared, he wouldn't have gotten any right fucking answers. That's the truth of it, okay? If he had used your silly formula, he would not have gotten the right answers. He wouldn't have been Isaac Newton. He would have been some jackass you don't even heard of. some idiot religious kook that we'd all ignore. He wouldn't be Isaac Newton if he was getting wrong answers with your stupid, idiotic, wrong formula. I mean, his greatest enemy in life, you think Newton, if you dug him up, would be, oh, I'm so happy that you've accepted this silly nonsense of my worst adversary who stole my goddamn calculus. No, I don't think so, fuckhead. All right, I can arrive at that equation, at the equation of work energy. So now the work energy formula is way to the 1800s. So that clearly has nothing to do with Newton. You're not going to make Newton into that crap. F times distance. What the fuck distance you're talking about? Force times distance? It's irrelevant, the distance. I can roll, I mean, on a theoretical nice bowling alley, I could roll the damn ball for fucking miles. I mean, it's just too stupid. Distance. What distance? Distance, it can only be relevant if you're fighting an opposing force. There has to be some force you're opposing where distance could matter. And it has to be a constant force again. Okay, work energy. It basically tells me that work equals change in kinetic energy. So just more baby talk. I have circular reasoning. I'll use the work equation to justify my kinetic energy equation, and my work equation was a derivative of my kinetic energy equation. So the two equations justify each other. It's still absolute fucking nonsense, and it doesn't make any rational sense, and none of you people ever even use it. You just do the formula. You never put a real number in. So again, go calculate the rolling train analogy with your make-believe distance argument. Go ahead, show me how you use the work equation, to explain how one kinetic ball exchanges its energy with another. All right. In kinetic energy, and obviously the formula for kinetic energy is fully compatible with Newton's equation. So again, it's not fully compatible in any way whatsoever except if you completely pervert it. So I've seen derivations where they use dot products and then multiply the dot product in the equation to double, to find an excuse to put the velocity in the equation twice. I mean, really, you think Newton was stupid enough to think that somehow velocity is twice as important as mass, when there's absolutely no physical evidence that it is, and you're just going to keep asserting that it is, even though you don't have any physical evidence demonstrating it. You don't have a single experiment that you can show me to show me this extra energy being collected. It's just absolute nonsense, and here you are just sitting here defending nonsense. But whatever, that's your prerogative. All right, F equals same old change of momentum of change as you said. So F times dt. So now I'm multiplying the force times the change in time. So if we make the change in time 1 second, now we can just get rid of all the times. Okay, so we'll just make the time 1 second. So now it's still F equals momentum. All right, so we're still okay. But V equals dx over t, and the dx has to do with the distance it traveled. So again, he's already perverted it with the work equation. So now we're already doing something that doesn't have anything to do with anything. Measuring, what distance are you measuring? There's no distance to measure. All right, so I can write blah, 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 blah for the constant mass, dv. So he just keeps doing the same stuff. If you do the integration, then you will find that the work, so again, here it is again. So it's the dx. So he's doing the change in distance is called dx. So that's how funny this thing is, right? They're using the x term to say distance, and then they use the d term to say the change in distance. I mean, what a pile of crap. Okay. To be the change in kinetic energy. So the equation of Newton's second law. So he says this is some sort of clean derivation, that this nonsense of applying the work function, the fake work formula, okay, which is saying work equals force times distance, and now they're replacing that in the formula by calling it dx. And so they're putting the work formula in the formula, that somehow that's Newton's formula. That's a clean Newton derivative. No, it isn't. All right, so if the equation Newton's second law is F equal to, you can say the energy work theorem is a consequence of Newton's second law. No, they're both made out of each other. It's circular reasoning, period. And agrees 100% with it. Well, whatever. And it's absolute crap. So again, none of that is in any way well established as a fact. And there's no way to even explain what you're talking about. If something's carrying momentum, what distance are you talking about? What distance are you talking about when two things hit each other? Where's the distance you're talking about? Where is it? How do you measure it? Oh, that won't happen. All right. So, yeah, I won't bother with the singularity crap, because it's just so far off the subject. I should just make a video where all the off-subject stuff, just off-subject. I'm doing the quantum mechanical side of this thing more. It's so much more important than the relativity, fake, whatever, bullshit, multi-dimensional horse shit. Okay, all that physics is shit. Singularities are not even possible. You still have to make electrons and protons do things. You can't put you can't, do you really think you can put an electron here in space? And then you can put another electron in the same space. And then I can put another electron in the same exact space. And then I can put another electron in the same exact space. And another electron in the same exact space. Do you really think you can do that? Do you really think that makes any fucking sense at all? That's how the universe works, that electrons can actually be in the same exact space. A billion of them. I can put exactly a billion electrons all in exactly the same location. Fuck no. It's just silly. So that's all. It's just silly. So like I said, you want to believe? Go ahead and believe. I can't stop you from being religious kooks. But there's no good evidence that any of that shit happens ever in the universe. Alright, so this has been a DraftScience video presentation and such.